everyone, it's Chari here today, and I'm going to be making this cute little watercolor card. I'm going to be using the bike from Cruising Through Life and the die that goes with it because I think it's really awesome. We have a die for that bike now. I'm going to be using the little dog, and I'm also going to be using that little hi there sentiment from Chit Chat. So I've mounted my stamps, the bike, the dog, and then the little flag that goes with the bike on my Misty tool here. And I'm going to be stamping these on watercolor paper. I'm using the Tim Holtz Distress Watercolor cardstock. And I'm going to be stamping with the VersaFine ink because I'm going to be doing watercoloring. You could also emboss, but you need to use an ink that's not going to smear when you get it wet with the water. So I'm going to stamp those down, and part of the reason why I'm using the Misty tool is because this watercolor paper has a little texture, so I wasn't sure, and it actually didn't stamp very well right in the middle. So since I'm using that Misty and it's lined up in the corner, I can just stamp right down again and get that center and get a nice stamped image. I also cut another piece of the watercolor paper with one of the stitch rectangles, so that when it's on a standard size A2 card size base, you'll have this nice border around it. And this is going to act as my background. So I want to watercolor this first so I can set it aside and let it dry. And I'm going to be using an acrylic block and some Distress Ink mini pads here. I'm going to use tumbled glass, and I'm also going to mix that with some Salty Ocean to make kind of a sky background. I'm going to take some water with my watercolor brush and just put a coat of water all over the paper. Obviously, this is super speed. I do not paint this fast. And then I'm going to use the water to pick up some of that ink color, and I'm just going to kind of slosh it around and get a good coat of color all over the background. Once I've gotten a coat on there, I can go back in and take some of the darker color and add some more interest so that it's not one big solid color, it looks more watercolored. And then I'm going to get a little bit of mowed lawn here and a little more water, and I'm just going to kind of put some on the ground down here. It's not going to be perfect, it's mostly going to be covered up by the bike, but I just want to ground it in some way. And I'm just going to move that around a little bit with the water and set it aside to dry. Now I'm using these Saya, I think, S-A-I watercolor pens, or they're brush pens really, they're not watercolor pens, but they have a brush tip. I tried a couple different ways of using these, and the best way I found was to color it on the acrylic block and then add some water. So that is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to use 2 shades of blue here to color my bike. So you can see when I color these on the block, you can see kind of the brush tip move around. So there's probably lots of different methods. I just got these markers and wanted to give them a try. So I'm doing watercoloring with them. And I'm using a water brush, but I'm dipping it in the water. I feel like I have a little more control when I pick the water up from the container rather than using the water brush by squeezing it. And this is about my 3rd try to find out the best way to do these. I did color on the paper first and try to smear it around. It required a little too much water, and because I didn't emboss this image, the color kind of went outside the lines a little bit. So this seems to work pretty well. You don't want to put too much water on there if you haven't embossed the image. Now I'm going to use a little red color for some accents. And then I tried to use the gray here for the tires, but it was a little light, so you'll see I'm going to go back in and use the black one. And since it's watercolored, it's not going to be stark black, it's still going to be like a darker gray. Now you can see I'm getting it a little darker there. Now I went over the spokes because those spokes get cut out with the die, which is awesome. And then I'm going to go in and just color the basket in a pinky color. I didn't want it to be too dark, I wanted it to be a little different than the accents on the bike. Now I'm going to use kind of a amber color and a brown together to color the little dog. giving him some shade on the bottoms of his ears and right along the bottom of him. And then I also colored the flag with a purple color as well. So now I'm going to line up my dies here, and I've already got the dog and the flag on there, and then this bike. I requested this die when Kelly asked what dies to do. I said I've cut that bike out once and I'm not cutting it out again. So if you make a bike die, that would be awesome. And now we have one. And you'll see here once I run this through my die cut machine just how perfectly it cuts out that bike. It cuts out all the inside pieces, all between the spokes of the wheels, and it's just perfect. So here's kind of the layout of my card, and I'm going to put the little dog in the basket of the bike. So I need to cut a little hole for him to slip inside. So I'm going to cut right along that front line of the basket, make a little slit, and then he will just fit right down inside. And it'll look like he's inside the basket there. I mean, how cute is that? And I'm going to use a little bit of liquid glue to tack him in place on the back side so that he doesn't move around. I'll just squirt a little bit of it right underneath him, and then it'll be right against the bike. And this way he'll stay in place and it kind of becomes more one piece. And I'm going to do the same thing with the little flag. Put just a little bit of that liquid adhesive on the bottom of the flag so that I can put the pole that the flag goes on. It's a really small area, so it's kind of hard to get it on there, but once I get it on there, I'm going to let it dry a little bit. Now I'm going to put the background, now that it's dry, onto my card base, and I'm putting a whole bunch of foam adhesive on here just to make sure that there's no sagging of that background. And I want to pop it up off the card base. So I'm using strips all over the back. And I'm just going to line it up. This is just a craft colored card base that I've cut from some cardstock here. And then now I can adhere my bike down, so I'm just using some liquid glue. I don't have to do it on the outside edges because this bike's going to kind of hang out on the bottom of the square but overhang all the edges. Kind of a different kind of look rather than fitting it within the seam. Kind of like this look of hanging it out over the edge of the frame. Just going to give it some pressure around there to make sure everything's adhered down. And then to put the little flag on the back, because part of it's going to hang over the side too, I put a little bit of foam adhesive on the flag, and then I'll just glue the pole down to the bike in the background. But this way the part that's overhanging off that square in the background will have something to adhere to as well, and it won't sag either. I kind of like that it overhangs the side of the card too. Now for the sentiment, this is the little hi there word bubble from the Chip Chat set. I'm just stamping it in some gray hippo ink, and I die cut it out, and I'm just going to adhere that down with a foam adhesive square as well and pop that up off the background. Lastly, I'm adding a little Wink of Stella glitter just to some of the accents around on the bike, just to give it some shine. Because, you know, every bike needs glitter. And then I thought I'd round the bottom corners kind of to mimic and go with the round wheels of the bike. And then I thought it needed a couple more things, so I decided to add some embellishments to the sky. This is the Irresistible Pico Embellisher in Wedding Dress color from Sukaneko. And you shake it up really good. It's got a really fine precision tip, and it's basically like making your own white enamel dots. I usually do it on a scrap piece of paper to make sure there's no air bubbles and it's coming out the nozzle really well. And then you just go to town, and you can make them as tiny and delicate as you like, or as large as you like. And you set them aside to dry, and it's just like having enamel dots that you pulled off a backer sheet. it's got a nice little tip that goes in there to keep it from getting clogged, which is great. And there is the card. I think it is adorable. Love that little puppy in the basket. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.